Imagine a hillside overlooking the Sea of Galilee, where a crowd gathers in eager anticipation. They've heard of a man named Jesus, whose words carry the weight of divine authority and whose miracles defy explanation. As he begins to speak, the air is filled with a sense of awe and expectancy. This is the Sermon on the Mount, a message that turns conventional wisdom upside down and calls for a radical transformation of the heart. Join us as we delve into the profound teachings of Jesus, uncovering truths that challenge, inspire, and transform. If this glimpse into the Sermon on the Mount has captivated you, make sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell to stay updated on all our future episodes. Dive deeper into the timeless teachings of the Bible with us, and never miss an episode filled with divine insights and inspiring narratives. Subscribe now and embark on a journey through the profound wisdom of Scripture. It was a time of great anticipation. The people of Galilee had heard of Jesus, the carpenter from Nazareth who spoke with unparalleled authority and performed miracles. Word spread quickly, and crowds gathered wherever he went. One day, Jesus ascended a mountainside near the Sea of Galilee. The eager crowd followed, their hearts filled with a mix of curiosity and hope. As they settled on the slopes, Jesus sat down, taking the posture of a rabbi about to teach. His disciples gathered close, ready to absorb his every word. The scene was serene, yet there was an air of expectancy. The backdrop of the Sea of Galilee provided a stunning contrast to the deep spiritual truths that were about to be revealed. Jesus began with what we now call the Beatitudes, a series of statements that turned conventional wisdom upside down. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, he proclaimed. The crowd listened intently, puzzled yet intrigued. To be poor in spirit, Jesus explained, meant recognizing one's spiritual need and dependence on God. It was a call to humility and a promise of divine reward. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. This was not merely a promise of solace in times of grief, but a deeper invitation to share in God's sorrow over sin and brokenness in the world. The comfort promised was the presence and healing of God Himself. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Contrary to worldly expectations, meekness was not weakness but strength under control. It was about submitting to God's will and trusting in His justice. Such meekness would ultimately lead to the inheritance of God's kingdom. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. This beatitude struck a chord with those who long for justice and goodness in a world rife with corruption and oppression. Jesus promised that such yearning would not go unfulfilled. God would satisfy their deepest desires. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Mercy, an attribute often overlooked in a harsh world, was elevated by Jesus as a divine quality. Those who practiced mercy would, in turn, receive God's mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Purity of heart went beyond external piety. It was about inner integrity and a singular focus on God. Such purity would allow one to perceive God's presence in ways others could not. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. In a world of conflict, those who sought to reconcile and bring peace reflected God's own nature. They would be recognized as His true children. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Jesus prepared His followers for the inevitable opposition they would face. Yet, He assured them that their suffering for His sake would be honored in God's kingdom. These teachings were radical, countercultural, and deeply challenging. They called for a transformation of heart and mind, inviting listeners to embrace values that went against the grain of societal norms. As the crowd pondered these words, they began to realize that following Jesus required a profound shift in perspective, a shift that promised unparalleled blessings. After delivering the Beatitudes, Jesus turned his attention to the identity and mission of his followers. "You are the salt of the earth," he declared. Salt, a valuable commodity in ancient times, was used for preservation and flavor. By calling his followers salt, Jesus emphasized their role in preserving moral integrity and adding divine flavor to the world. However, he warned, if salt lost its saltiness, it was useless. This was a call to maintain their distinctiveness and influence. Next, Jesus proclaimed, "You are the light of the world." Light dispels darkness and reveals truth. His followers were to be beacons of truth and righteousness, illuminating the way for others. "A city set on a hill cannot be hidden," he explained. Their lives, marked by godliness, would stand out and draw others to God. He encouraged them to let their light shine before others, so that their good deeds would glorify their Father in heaven. Having established their identity and mission, Jesus addressed a critical aspect of his teaching: the law. "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets," he began. "I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them." This statement was revolutionary. Jesus positioned himself not as a rebel against the law, but as its ultimate fulfillment. He embodied the very essence and purpose of the law, bringing it to its intended completion. Jesus emphasized the enduring validity of the law. "Until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen, will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished." He underscored the importance of adhering to God's commandments and teaching others to do the same. However, he also made it clear that righteousness was not about legalistic observance, but a matter of the heart. In a series of "you have heard that it was said" statements, Jesus redefined righteousness by going beyond mere external adherence to the law. "You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, 'You shall not murder,'" he began. "But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment." Jesus addressed the root cause, anger, highlighting the importance of reconciliation and forgiveness. He continued, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall not commit adultery.' But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart." Jesus exposed the heart's intentions, calling for purity in thought and desire. Jesus' teachings on oaths, retaliation, and love for enemies further expanded the understanding of the law. He urged his followers to let their yes be yes and no be no, to turn the other cheek when wronged, and to love their enemies. These radical principles challenged conventional wisdom and demanded a higher standard of love and integrity. The crowd was astounded by Jesus' authoritative teaching. Unlike the scribes and Pharisees, who focused on external conformity, Jesus called for a transformation of the heart. His reinterpretation of the law was not about relaxing its demands, but fulfilling its true purpose: to reflect God's character and bring about genuine righteousness. As the sermon continued, Jesus addressed the spiritual disciplines of prayer, fasting, and the pursuit of true treasures. These practices were integral to Jewish piety, but Jesus sought to purify and elevate their practice, ensuring they were performed with the right heart and motive. "When you pray," Jesus instructed, "do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Instead, He advised his followers to pray in secret, where their Father, who sees what is done in secret, would reward them. Prayer, Jesus emphasized, was about genuine communion with God, not public display. To guide them further, Jesus offered a model prayer, known today as the Lord's Prayer. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name, it began. This prayer was revolutionary, inviting believers to address God with the intimate term Father while honoring His holiness. It encompassed praise, submission to God's will, requests for daily provision, forgiveness, and deliverance from evil. This balanced and comprehensive prayer highlighted the relational and dependent nature of true prayer. Regarding fasting, Jesus continued, "When you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show others they are fasting. Instead, He instructed them to anoint their head and wash their face, so that their fasting would be seen only by God." Like prayer, fasting was to be a private act of devotion, focused on drawing closer to God rather than seeking human admiration. Jesus then turned to the matter of true treasures. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Earthly wealth was temporary and vulnerable, but heavenly treasures were eternal and secure. He urged his listeners to prioritize spiritual riches, aligning their hearts with God's eternal kingdom. The eye is the lamp of the body. Jesus continued, "If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness." This metaphor underscored the importance of a pure and focused vision, free from materialism and greed. A healthy spiritual perspective would fill one's life with light, while a corrupt focus would lead to darkness. Jesus' teachings culminated in a powerful statement: no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. This stark choice between God and wealth challenged his listeners to examine their loyalties and priorities. Devotion to God demanded undivided allegiance, free from the competing demands of materialism. The crowd was captivated by Jesus' teachings, which called for sincerity, humility, and a focus on eternal values. His words challenged their superficial practices and invited them into a deeper, more authentic relationship with God. As they pondered these radical teachings, they began to see the transformative power of living according to Jesus' principles. As Jesus' sermon drew to a close, he issued a series of powerful warnings and encouragements, urging his listeners to choose the path of true discipleship and live according to his teachings. Enter through the narrow gate, Jesus instructed, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. This stark contrast highlighted the challenge and exclusivity of following Jesus. The narrow gate represented the path of true discipleship, requiring commitment, sacrifice, and obedience. Jesus continued with a warning about false prophets. Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. By their fruit, you will recognize them. He emphasized the importance of discernment, cautioning against those who appeared righteous but led others astray. True followers of Jesus would be known by their good fruit, actions that reflected his teachings and character. Not everyone who claimed to follow Jesus would enter the kingdom of heaven. Many will say to me on that day, "Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name and in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles, then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. This sobering warning stressed the importance of genuine relationship and obedience over mere external acts of piety. To conclude his sermon, Jesus told the parable of the wise and foolish builders. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. The wise builder represented those who not only listened to Jesus' teachings, but also applied them in their lives. In contrast, everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. The foolish builder symbolized those who heard Jesus' words, but failed to act on them, resulting in destruction when life's challenges came. The crowd was astonished at Jesus' teaching, for he taught with authority, unlike their teachers of the law. His words were not merely instructive, but transformative, challenging them to a higher standard of living and devotion. They left the mountainside deeply moved, contemplating the profound truths they had heard. The Sermon on the Mount remains one of the most significant and enduring teachings of Jesus. It calls believers to a radical lifestyle marked by humility, integrity, and genuine righteousness. Its timeless principles continue to challenge and inspire, inviting all who hear to enter the narrow gate, bear good fruit, and build their lives on the solid foundation of Jesus' teachings.